Hey guys, today we're talking about the completing the square method to solve quadratic equations. So you already know how to solve a quadratic equation by factoring and by taking the square root. But today we're learning the third way, which is completing the square. Now that sounds kind of silly, completing the square. So what does it mean? It just means that we can change a quadratic portion into a perfect square so that way I can find the square root and solve it. Take a look at this. Like if we have x squared and bx, we can half bx and move that other bx over here, and then we just fill in this gap with b over 2 squared. So we're just building a perfect square so that way I can take the square root and solve for it, okay? So kind of works like this. This is a perfect square. X squared plus 6x plus 9 is a perfect square because it creates x plus 3 squared. And I know it's a perfect square because half of 6 is 3, and then 3 squared is 9. So that's the whole thing. We take half of the middle number, the b, square it, and that gives us our third number to create a perfect square. Okay? So you're going to hear me say it a lot, but to go through this, we want it, half it, square it, add it. So we check and make sure that our number in front's a 1, so we want it, we half it, so we're going to take half of 8, which makes 4, and then we square it, and if we square it, it's going to be 16, and we add it back on. So what we've done by wanting it, halving it, squaring it, adding it back on, we've created a perfect square. M squared plus 8m plus 16 is a perfect square. M plus 4 squared, perfect square. Okay? If I took this m plus 4 and I squared it out and multiplied it out, it would get me back to this point. And so my C is 16. Take a look at number 2 here with me. We're going to want it already there, so we put our x down here. Half it, so half of negative 4 is negative 2. Square it. Negative 2 squared just happens to be positive 4, and we add it back on. Notice how all of these are pluses, okay? Because each time after you square it, it's going to give you a positive that we add back on. So even though this was a negative 4, we added back on a positive. So the C we add back on is a positive 4. Take a look at number 3 with me. So number 3, we're going to want it. We're good. Half it. Well, half of 1 is going to be negative 1/2. So we're going to have x minus 1/2. Square it. Well, 1/2 squared would be 1/2 times 1/2, which is going to be 1/4. So we're going to add back on a 1/4, and that's going to be my C. My C is going to be 1/4. Last one over here, y squared minus 2y, so we're going to put our 1x here, half it, half of negative 2 is negative 1, square it, it's going to be positive 1. So there you go. All we have to do is half the middle number, square it, add it back, and that gives us our perfect square that we can do a lot of work with. Okay, let's turn the page and let's do some problems with this. So there's a lot of steps up here, and I definitely recommend that you go back and read these steps if you ever get lost. But step number 1, we collect the variable terms on one side of the equation and constants on the other. Okay, so first step, we're going to move all of my whole numbers. That's what constants means. Whole numbers, all my whole numbers to one side. So we're going to have x squared plus 6x equals negative 8. Next, what we're going to do is we are going to divide both sides by a. That's what want it means. Want it means that we're going to make sure that this first one is a 1 and nothing else. If it's anything else, we're going to divide by that number. Step 3, complete the square by adding b over 2 squareds to both sides. So we're going to half 6, okay? So we're going to half 6, we're going to go x plus 3, and then we're going to square it. 3 squared is 9. So I'm going to add back a 9, which means I'm also going to add back a 9 on the other side. Okay? So what I have done is I've created a perfect square here. And we can turn this perfect square into an x plus 3 squared. The step I always forget, though, is if we add 9 to this side to create the perfect square, I also need to add 9 to the other side to keep my equation balanced. So we're going to get x plus 3 squared equals, after we add these two together, negative 8 plus 9 is 1. So now I have a very friendly equation. This is just like what we did yesterday, where we created a square root equation that I can solve. Look at this. X plus 3 squared equals 1. Now, all I need to do is square root this side to cancel out that squared, and square root this side. So the square root of x plus 3 squared is x plus 3. And the square root of 1 is plus or minus 1. So there you go. We have completed the square, and we've set it equal to we've solved it. It's great. However, now we have x plus 3 equals 1. So that means we're going to get two different answers, one with my positive 1, one with my negative 1. So let's split that up. We're going to have x plus 3 equals positive 1, and x plus 3 equals negative 1. Minus 3 to both sides, we get x equals negative 2. Minus 3 to both sides, we get x equals negative 4. So there's our two answers. X equals negative 2, and x equals negative 4. And it works out just like that, okay? Let's try it again on this one. So first step, get my whole numbers on one side, my x's and x squared on the other. Second step, make sure that my first number is 1. Wait, my first number isn't 1 here. So all we're going to do is just divide everything by 2. Keep it balanced. And we're going to have 1x squared plus 4x. Notice how I leave a space right here to add my number back in. Equals negative 28 divided by 2 is negative 14. Then we're going to half the middle number, right? Half of the middle number is 2. We're going to square it and add it back, so we're going to add back a 4. So that means I also need to add a 4 to this side. So in my perfect square, we're going to have x plus 2 squared equals negative 14 plus 4 is negative 10. Then we just solve it, okay? That's all we got to do. So to solve it, we're going to because if I go 2 times 2, that's 4. X times x, that's x squared. Add these together, we get the middle number. It's a perfect square. Now, if I solve it, all we need to do is square root this side, square root this side. So we get x plus 2 equals, well, the square root of negative 10, 10 doesn't cake. Doesn't cake. So we need to change that negative to an I, so this is just going to be plus or minus I square roots of 10. Last step, bring this plus 2 over, minus 2 to this side, minus 2 to this side, we get x equals negative 2 plus or minus I square roots of 10. All right, good job, guys. Okay, now let's try number 7. So number 7. First step, make sure that we move all my whole numbers to one side, my regular numbers on the left side. So we're going to add 16 to start here. Bring this over to this side. So we're going to have 4x squared plus 8x equals 16. Now I need to 1 it. So which means I need to turn that 4 into a 1. So we're going to divide that by 4, divide that by 4, divide that by 4. It needs to be a perfect 1. So we're going to get x squared plus 2x equals 4. Then we're going to 1 it. So 1 that, divided by 2. So 1 it, half it. Get that to be x plus 1 squared. Square it. So add 1 here and add it back. So 4 plus 1 is 5. Now, to get that squared away, we're going to need to square root both sides. And that's going to give me x plus 1 equals plus or minus the square root of 5. Now just minus 1 to both sides, and we're going to get x equals negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 5. We cannot forget to want it on this. Want it, half it, square it, add it. Okay, number 8. Solve by completing the square on this one. So once again, we're going to move all of my x's to one side, all of my whole numbers to the other. So I'm going to minus 24x minus 24x. So yeah, minus 24x minus 24x to this side. But I'm also going to add 24 here and add 24 here. Okay? So that leaves me with, well, let's see here. We have 3x squared minus 24x. Love it. Then, on this other side, we have 3 plus 24 is 27. Then, I need to want it. We need to make sure that 3 is a 1. So I'm going to divide this by 3, this by 3, and this by 3. So that's going to give me x squared minus 8x equals 27 divided by 3 is 9. Then we're going to half it. We're going to half it. So half of 8, negative 8 is negative 4. So it's going to be x minus 4 squared. Square it, we get 16. So we're going to add back 16. So 9 plus 16 is 25. So now we're going to have x minus 4 squared equals 25. We're going to need to square root both sides to get rid of that squared. And so that's going to be x minus 4 equals plus or minus 5. So once again, we have x minus 4 equals plus or minus 5. So we're going to get two answers. We're going to get x minus 4 equals positive 5. And x minus 4 equals negative 5. So we're going to add 4 to both sides, and we're going to get x equals 9. We're going to add 4 to both sides here, and we're going to get x equals negative 1. So there are my two answers for that last one. So remember, want it, half it, square it, add it. Want it, half it, square it, add it. Then that allows you to set it up with a perfect square equals our number. Then we square root it and go from there. Okay? And it's just kind of like what we did yesterday. All right? Hope this video was helpful for you guys. Hope you have a great rest of your day.